Welcome. Quick sound check here. Can you all hear me? Okay, a few notes to our webinar software here. For those of you who aren't here that often, you can type in the chat. Unfortunately, with this webinar, I can only see your questions. And so there's no need to comment. Nobody will see that. I'm the only one who can read them. So, and while I'm talking, it's hard for me to read. So please use the chat function for questions only. You have a microphone that you can control yourself. All of your guys' microphones should be unmuted. Yeah, you need to take control of your own microphones, very important, so we don't have your background noises on the recording. I have plenty of them. And yes, thank you very much for letting me know that you can hear me for the feedback. And we have a hand symbol here, which is a raise your hand. We can use this function for polls. When I ask you questions, who, if you, blah, blah, you can use the hand symbol to raise your hand, or you can use the hand symbol for, me needing to do anything for you, like unmuting your microphone or something like that. So just real quick. Yeah. Welcome to our Mastering Our Critical Inner Voice, short CIV, and Negative Inner Self-Talk, a webinar workshop here within the Sacred Self-Healing Self-Mastery series, a practice. My name is Jona Bryndis, energy coach, energy healer, therapist, and so forth. You know all this, yeah. And today we want to focus on strategies for overcoming our negative inner self-talk and dealing with our critical inner voice. Maybe when we're laying in bed, can't fall asleep. We're going to cover some aspects of terminology, understanding the origin of the inner critic and inner negativity, understanding their power better, the energetic dynamics, what it does in our body, in our emotions, in our mind, to our spiritual beliefs and so forth. And I want to really dive into how to discern and learn some ways to break free from them or break through them. Okay, so that is our goal here. Obviously, the bigger picture is mastering our thinking, sort of uncovering self-deception, perhaps, and unconscious self-sabotage, which is something that many of us experience and don't really know where it originates. Well, let me just enlighten you here very quick. A lot of your unconscious self-sabotage occurs in your head, occurs in your thinking, and mostly through the inner critic, the inner negativity, the critical inner voice. Let me ask you a question here, like testing our poll function with raise your hand. Who of you has already identified that one of their main issues is that you're mainly in your head? Yeah, that you're constantly questioning things, maybe even questioning yourself, questioning your perception, questioning what is going on, questioning, whether it's your fault or what you should do about this. So, this sort of mentalizing of your world, of your life experience. Yeah, it's already like a good sort of 60%, 70% here. Yes, Cindy. That's a very good self-reflection. Most of us actually are mostly in our heads. Why is that? Because we have been conditioned to do so. We have been trained, be it in school, be it through literature, movie, songs, and so forth. Our collective, sort of unconscious here that if we think we are, so we're identifying with our thinking, and also that knowledge is power, which are all paradigms that are changing right now. We already know that knowledge itself is not power, because then we would all be indefinite, would be indefinitely powerful, because in times of internet we have knowledge available without restriction. But it isn't knowledge that gives us power, it is knowing, and there is where most of our conflicts are located. So if you put this into context with all the different levels of reality and self-awareness, you see that the mental, yeah, the you know, what's in our head just makes up you know, 1/5, if not less, of what we're actually experiencing and where we need to contextualize what we're experiencing. We have a physical experience that is obviously determined by our body and the tactile sensations that we have. We have an emotional experience that is determined through our psychology, through our emotional processing. Yeah, and we have the mental cognition, yeah, that is mostly formed through construct that were either spoon-fed or transported to us at some point. Yeah, without those constructs, a lot of these beliefs that we have in our minds wouldn't exist. Yeah, so there's a lot of research, obviously, that shows that, and sociology, for example, investigates that, you know, like how growing up in different ethnic or cultural circumstances changes the mental constructs around life itself, around who we are, and so forth. Then we have the spiritual aspects in life, which are more sort of the abstract elements of life. Yeah, this is where we feel the I want to say, inkling that we're not just our body, that there's more there, that there is something outside of our physical existence. We form you know, beliefs around those abstracts, such as religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs, you know, worldviews. And then we have the energetic perspective, which develops for us when we are beginning to self-master the physical, emotional, mental, and ultimately also the spiritual level of self-awareness, namely what we then call the conscious self. So the energetic perspective is basically the one that entails all of them. It's the holistic perspective. Without going any deeper, it allows us to, you know, discern and form an augmented worldview, and you know, a better navigation, a better roadmap for our life, because it provides us with answers, it provides us with meaning. Yeah, and one of the biggest things in our life today that we all are yearning for is you know, purpose and meaning, and you know, wanting to understand ourselves better so that we can make better choices. And that's then where we get into you know, the need for new tools. And this new tool, then, you know, if we want to grow beyond our instincts, beyond our conditioning, is called self-mastery. So self-mastery used to be just a pathway for a few, mostly spiritually dedicated, devoted people like monks and so forth. Today, this is something that we, as sort of first world countries, you know, see as self-growth, as our, you know, sort of self-help, self-growth, self-healing task. And you see here again sort of a hierarchy at the beginning, at the foundation of it is the mastering of our thinking. This is what the last two workshops were for. Then we are addressing, or we need to address, the mastering of our emotions, which is quite tricky, because we can often not really differentiate our emotions. There's certain tools needed for that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But the need for mastering our emotions is obvious, because we need more clarity. Yeah, so we often make decisions based on emotions, 67% according to stats, and that's not really so aware to us, since we've all or more or less all of us are diagnosed that we're mostly in our heads. So that doesn't really go together. There's an incongruence here mastering our expressions, that's then, you know, the next level of self-mastery, where we really need to look at congruence, at like, okay, how does this, what we say, what we do, what we choose in our life match up with what we truly want, what we truly need. Yeah, this is where we need discernment as a prerequisite to even be able to have that sort of contemplative thought. Yeah, something along those lines. Are those my thoughts? Are those my true needs? Are those my true wants? So you guys here are all familiar with this kind of thinking, and basically your journey is here with me is about discernment, yeah, about mastering all of this. Then there comes a part here where we have to, you know, sort of perhaps make a shift or change in our life, namely when we begin to become access to when we begin to be able to access our higher thinking, and we begin to see the bigger picture, we need to recontextualize and realize higher goals. If we have higher goals, and all that obviously still, you know, while mastering our thinking, emoting, and our expressing, yeah, which then as the sort of the highest level of self-mastery leads us to mastering our will. This is something that you know from monks and so forth, you know, celibacy and stuff like that. They all have to do with this discipline, yeah, this ability to master the will to overcome the conditions of 3D, yeah, so that you become free of all of these lower human notions, yeah. And in the end, you know, once you go this path, you realize that you know, to live a conscious life, you really need to learn how to harmonize all of this, because the fundamental goals that we all have, yeah, love, truth, freedom, trust, you know, feeling safe, feeling like you matter, you can consciously create something, and also consciously perceive sort of what it is that your purpose is, and so forth. That requires us to harmonize all of those. Now, last time I conveyed to you that there's a war over your ability to concentrate, and that this more than ever requires us to be very conscientious and conscious as to what we are investing in, what we are paying attention to, because the outer conditions are such that we are being distracted. And this is affecting our focus altogether. Like, a lot of people complain about this sort of ADHD-ness and brain fog, and with it, your ability to think, feel, perceive, and choose on your own. So this is a big deal, guys, and those of you who are into conspiracy theories, you should refrain from theoreticizing about who is doing that. It's much more effective to actually focus on what does this do to me, and how can I counteract this, and that's why we're here. Yeah, we're investigating these effects, yeah, the influences on our thinking. And this is a bit more complex, because we have to identify really so what it is that is being attacked here. Yeah, if you're asking me, what is mostly being attacked is that connection with our consciousness. Yeah, so the phenomenon is that we mostly get stuck here in our ego, personality, and identifications. Yeah, so right now you can see in the world that there is a very opinionated, very polarized sort of energy in between all of us, separating us, yeah, and really sort of preventing us from forming a larger perspective. We get so wrapped up in details and opinions and so forth that we forget about all the other. Yeah, so right now here, this is what we are getting distracted into. Okay. And that's why we talk so much about opinions. Yeah, so how does this relate with our critical inner voice and negativity? And this is where I shift the microphone to you guys, and where we go into the more practical part. First and foremost, you know, when we investigate the words critical inner voice and negative inner self-talk, I want to ask you, is there, do you think there's a difference there? What does your critical inner voice sound like? That is it always negative? You know, is you know, the critical inner voice or the inner critic always, you know, mean? Or, you know, I would like to hear from you what your inner critic sounds like. This can be different for each and every one of us. So please just share, don't think too much. The thinking is part of this distraction mechanism here, the, you know, the hijacking your ability to concentrate. So I talk a little bit in the beginning to give all you guys a moment to sort of collect your thoughts. Yeah, and then I'd love to hear from you. What does your inner critic sound like? Cindy, what does yours sound like?
So several different things. The obvious, you know, ego mouthpiece, as you call it, that's always stuck with me. You know, the why are you doing that? Or, you know, why are you wearing that? Why, you know, the mostly the just sort of self-berating kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
There's also an authoritarian one, which is very parental, very, you know, don't do that, you know, look both ways when you cross the street. And it doesn't always have to be, you know, harsh. Sometimes it's just that voice watching out for me when I'm not conscious. So the one that gets me, and the one that I think you're talking about, is the one that throws in self-doubt. It's the
Mm-hmm.
one that is, are you sure about that? Do
Oh.
you really want to do that? And it can come, you know, I can be with myself and you know, really feel into a certain thing, and I feel good about, you know, my decision, whatever that may be.
Uh-huh.
And that voice can come in even, you know, days later, hours later, days later, weeks later, like, oh, are you sure
Right.
you should have done that? That voice.
Okay, so I'm writing this down as you guys are sharing. Authoritarian, you said, and then you have the sort of questioning
The questioning myself voice.
questioning yourself. Yeah.
That's the
So
most destructive. I can identify the other ones very clearly.
mm-hmm.
That one's sneakier.
Self-questioning. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, that's a pretty good spectrum here already. Thank you, Cindy. What else? What else do we experience as the nature of our inner critic, or the voice, the critical inner voice?
Jona,
Mm-hmm.
this is Janet. It's funny because just yesterday, maybe I was like, why do I keep going through all these opinions? Like opinions kept jumping out, and maybe it's, I didn't recall being such a mentally opinionated person, and I did link it to like the computer's it's like you win a prize if you have the most opinions these days online. So,
Yeah, the
and
commenting, right? The inner
yeah,
commentary. Uh-huh.
yeah, like you're the top commenter of most opinions, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really, it just concerns me because I'm like, my kids are growing up in that, thinking that's okay, which is also something for this list. Something
I
I
mean,
experienced.
we get used to it. You know, we can, right? I mean, this is what I hear you say. You know,
Yeah,
that you that it takes you like a bunch of inner promptings to even realize how much of that is going on, even inside of yourself, even though you don't consider yourself as opinionated or judgmental.
right. And it really, like, two things come up when you say that. One is you definitely get some sort of, it's definitely feeding the ego, number one. And it definitely, you know, the adrenaline probably goes, and you get self-importance, all this kind of thing to make your day better because you were right in that opinion. And nobody's arguing with you when you wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, nobody's arguing with you. You're always right. You're always
Right.
right. Yeah, nice. I love it. So there's another validation
Well,
there.
plus I think, and then it helped me realize more and more, like on different levels, with self-truth, was the amount of judgment I grew up with, an amount of opinions about everything, about everyone. I mean, I eventually caught it
Yep.
as a teen sometimes, but a lot of it, like even here, I might not hear words because a lot of the judgment I was experiencing that was overlaid, it was silent. So it's this kind of inner judgmental feeling that has very few words attached to it. And a lot of it, I think, can bring up things about not being good enough, like definitely not being good enough.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah,
linked
we'll
to
see.
that.
Yeah, I mean, this is really something that is easy to filter for ourselves, because it has to do with us, like Cindy just said, you know, with us questioning ourselves, not being sure, being insecure on some level. But let's hear some more sort of critical inner voices, just to, well, maybe get a good laugh, or, you know, just to relieve ourselves of the idea or the belief that we're the only ones. Okay, that one I can promise you is not the case.
Yeah, Jona, it's Julianne here.
Hi, Julianne.
My inner critical voice, it really goes when I actually stop and feel into it, like feel into what the voice is saying or what I'm telling myself. It really goes against, when I drop in deeper, it really goes against what I really want to do, my true self. It's such a, I can feel it, so I really have to override it, because it'll stop me from doing so many things. That voice
What's your
that I got
theory? What's your
is
theory?
me.
Why this is going on inside of you? I mean, even though it contradicts what you stand for or what you believe in, what's your theory? What part of you that's coming from?
It's fear.
Okay.
There'll be
Okay.
there'll be a fear that comes forward, or even an old belief of like, no, you can't. Well, in my head it goes, you can't do that. No, that's not for you. You don't know how to do it. More so that it's it separates me. It's a real, like, a belief in I can't do what other people do. That's
Yeah, that goes back to what Janet said, right? The inadequacy or not being good enough, you know, like something like that. And the sad part is that our voice or inner voice makes it worse. You know, I mean, it's not enough that we're already insecure or don't know what the best thing is, but hearing that over and over again really makes it worse. Right?
It's
It doesn't help at all.
It's an overlay, and it's so strong that it actually drops my energy. And then I know that it's very hard to, well, it takes a lot of effort to come out of that downward spiral of defeatism. Like, I already feel defeated before I start something. And then it'll go into a tirade of all the reasons why I can't do it.
So like a rationalization along with it.
And it can be, a lot of it is you're stupid. No, you're not. You can't. That's not for you. You're not that type of person. Like, especially, it happened a lot when I was first using computers. I just thought, no, this is not for me. I haven't learned. I'm too old. I can't master this. And that was a real thing to actually push through. And, you know, I'd be in tears and really wanting to throw the computer away. Throw the computer out the window.
I even sometimes hear it as like, see, I told you. You know, it's like, it also wants to be right, like Jona said. It really wants to be right.
Of course you fail.
Yeah, something along that. I told you so.
And then if it goes deeper, it spirals into a helpless feeling, like my victim, poor me.
We're gonna go a little deeper into this here in a few moments, what it does to us. Let's just stick with investigating the nature of it. You said something, you know, that was also in Janet's sharing. It's kind of automatic to a degree. Yeah, it's not we're not consciously thinking that. Yeah, like you said, that like if you actually take a moment and listen to what it is, what comes at you there, you know, it's actually quite, this isn't you. This isn't right. I mean, there's
it's an automatic program that it's like a very heavy overlay, a very dense. I can feel it.
Yeah. So sometimes, and as some of you have already hinted at this, like Cindy, when you talked about the parental nature, there's also something about hearing something in sort of an unconscious way that has been recorded in us. Yeah, it's like a tape that plays. Yeah, can you guys relate to that? So the automaticness of it, sometimes it's just random and automatic, but sometimes it's literally sort of the like a recording. It's like you actually hear your parents, yeah, your mom, yeah, you actually hear these things. See, I told you so. That's something that I can clearly identify is something that my mom always said to me. Yeah, so there's a recording that plays. Yeah, it's like you said, Julianne, it's a program. Yeah, but it's
you're so stupid, Julianne. Oh, Julianne, you're stupid. And it's that third person thing too. I think you've talked about it before. Is like you are stupid, and I know then that's a recording. That's something that my mum and my dad that was from a child, because it's you. But then I can go into the I'm so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, from here to there, yeah, from listening to this automatic, and that's why I call it mouthpiece. It's, you know, this automatic recorded tape that is playing in the background, to then starting to believe it's you, to starting to like adapt to it and take this on as your own. That's just a small step, guys. So don't beat yourself up over that. Here we want to investigate the nature and the origin of our critical inner voice, and that can help us to overcome that. Yeah, like you said, it requires a conscious overcoming that. It's not gonna just stop by itself. Anybody ever experienced a critical inner voice or negative inner self-talk, even though you're experiencing something positive or you did something great?
Well, these always could, yeah, that definitely would happen to me, because I was just the ones that are coming from another person that are, it's beyond like a recording. Like I'll get a feeling, and then all of a sudden I can, it's almost like I'm being shown, oh, that's my mom saying this to me, or that's how she felt about me then, or she felt about herself. Or I could sit here and I just pulled up, you know, my one English teacher one day, you know, being really, yeah, it was like, it's clear. It's like I can't pull up some really good memories as easy as it is for me to pick up this Mrs. Wright yelling at me that day. So, and it's harsh, and it's almost, it's like it's like a mega recording, because it's so easy to access the feeling.
Yeah,
And then
some are really easy, some are really tricky. Yeah, it depends obviously on the age when we heard them. So anything we've heard in this sort of repetitive way, or if it was linked to some kind of emotional trauma before the age of 5, we won't be able to recall it. We will not be able to say, oh, this is my grandmother used to say this when I was 3 years old. We can't do that. Our brain wasn't developed enough. Our brain structure wasn't there yet to store things in a place that we could recall it. Yeah, this happens with the age of 5, where we become able to connect information with another. Do you know what I mean? So that's the problem with inner child stuff, because we really lack the cognitive ability to access that. Now, you just mentioned another aspect, and that's the reason why self-healing and energy healing in particular is so effective, because with that we can access, you know, things that are beyond just our brain, yeah, beyond just our conscious memory, yeah, or even unconscious memory. We can access our cell memory. Yeah, we can access anything. We can even access feelings, or, you know, they're limited. Those thoughts are limited, but you know, the thoughts that we had in the womb. Yeah. Or, and this is then, you know, ultimately the purpose of true self-connection, to recall, well, you know, it sounds a bit weird when I say it, but, you know, conversations that you have with your true self on a soul level, on an energetic level. Yeah. So this is the reason why we need to look at it in a more holistic way and not just in a psychological way. Yeah. But, you know, it's the harmonizing of it all in the end. Yeah, that does it. So that's why we're now just sort of taking a bit of an inventory here. What does this sound like? So,
I had one, Jona. You know,
yes.
when we were talking before, I have this thing where if something good does happen, or I'm sort of riding a good wave, oh, you fluked it, that, or it's something like that. That voice that comes through that actually puts me down straight away. Or yeah, there's always an alternative view.
So it really is degrading.
Yeah, it's degrading. I really feel good about something, and then oh yeah, this is going well. Oh nah.
Degrading, yeah. What else? Anybody else? Something different than what we already have.
Mine is sort of that I'm not eligible. So you don't rate, you don't count, you can watch these things, but you're not eligible for these things.
Okay. You don't belong.
Yeah, and if I'm having a success, the message that comes in is you're showing off, or you're being loud, or you're not being appropriate, and that's why there's this spotlight.
That goes into the direction of judgment, right? It's judgmental.
Yeah, huge judgment and control, but then I also exhibit the same thing. Judgment.
Somebody, I think Julian said separating. That's obviously a big word because we can feel separation on many different levels, but that's, I think, the nature of what you're describing here right now. It's like sort of no matter how hard you try, you'll never be good enough. You know, it's a variation of not good enough.
Yeah, and if I do something good enough, it's really because of a bad streak in me. That
oh, okay. So I see. This is twisted, Linda. Yeah. So there is really no way for you to succeed. Okay. Yeah. It's yes, Cindy. It's linked to deservingness, but this is a slightly different what Linda does. There is this is a mixture of judgment and authoritarianism. Okay. So there's always like somebody over you, right? That kind of judges how you got there. Yeah, so it's not enough to get there. It also has to be in a specific way. So it's sort of hyper critical, hyper nitpicky. Nitpicky, I think, is a good word, right?
Well, it's even worse than that. It's actually demeaning.
Yes,
so
it's demeaning.
However it is I got there, it shows something heinously wrong with me.
Yeah, demeaning, and in that context, I would also, this is the kind of the word that I was looking for here in general, like just as a differentiator. It's bullying almost. Would you agree? It's like, you know, like mean, really mean. You know, it's like,
yeah, it's really mean, and it is twisted. So because even, you know, with this particular person, even if I do the thing that is right and has to be recognized as positive, then the gratitude it's misdirected. So I'm taken out of the equation, and someone else is put in to say, oh, this person did this and this and this for me. Well, it wasn't that person.
Yeah, in psychology, they call this minimizing, where your role or your, you know, what you did, or it was just luck, you know, or it was just, you know, like that you can't really take any credits.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's often in conjunction with narcissism, where we experience something like that. Bullying is just sort of a general descriptor of this like really mean, you know, spreading lies or really taking everything down. Yeah, demeaning, denigrating, you know, like I think we got the gist here, right?
It's very like a couple other words that came to me are very alienating. Like the
Alienating,
whole
yeah.
the whole feeling that comes
Mm-hmm.
with it. That before any words, it's something to break you off from your happiness or from
Yes.
another person to really make
Mm-hmm.
that separation.
Mm-hmm.
It can
Yes,
be
so
insane.
exactly. Let's just add this here. Alien. I have a problem with spelling, as you guys all know. So I hope that we got a good picture here of what this is like for you. So
But
now
I
comes
there's something, Jona, too, that can come from like a jealous parent, like a jealous mother thing,
Mhm.
is putting, you can never have any credit, any anything. I remember like
Yeah,
painting pictures.
it's an emotional manipulation tactic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that can
And
come
it
from a
hurt.
narcissistic mother or father or a partner. It can come from many different sort of 3D relationship or in interactive, you know, interactions. Okay, but this is you trying to be a psychologist now and trying to figure out where this comes from. Let's
Oh yeah.
slow down. Let's stick
Okay.
with the nature of it. Let's stick just for a moment. Linda.
Yep.
Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. Okay.
Oh, sorry. No.
So you guys are good because you already have you're already developing theories where this is coming from. But let's put this aside for a moment. The main you know aspect here that is working in us and then ultimately creating this energetic stress in us is questioning. Yeah, you guys all figured this out. This is obviously along with all the different variations of it, but this is what it really does to us. It questions our permission to be, it questions our deservingness, it questions our agency, our capability of doing things, it questions our you know, like our intentions. I mean, you name it. It's fundamentally a questioning, and this leads to rather sort of self-defeating conflicts in us. Yeah, it's here. It's a form of fixation. Okay, so in this, we've talked about this last time in the workshop for mastering our thinking. Okay, how these inner conflicts occur and how they relate to certain coping mechanisms and our energetic stress levels. Yeah, I just wanted to show you guys this because now comes another question for you, namely, if you think, go away from your critical inner voice for a moment. That one is still relatively easy. Let's go a step deeper and deal or interrogate or reflect on our inner negativity. Who of you can identify their inner negativity? I mean, you know, like is aware that you have sort of a pessimism in you. Who of you can identify this already? Yeah, there's you know, nothing wrong with having sort of a realistic outlook on things, okay? But you know, when we realize that our say commentary or you know our opinions about what we're experiencing always tends to go into like sort of a negative context, okay, then we call this negativity. Yeah, it's pessimism and some kind of sort of dark side to everything. Yes, and Cindy, you're right. It's a lot related to judgment. Yeah, that's obvious. But what's the nature? Yeah, when you really feel into this, what do you think? Yeah, is underneath your negativity? Maybe give us a few examples. You see a picture here. There's a guy on there who hears a lot of stuff. You know, it's often coming forward, our negativity, when you know, when we're laying in bed, or when we have a low energetic state already. What is playing out there in you? Linda, what do you think?
For me, it's fear.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, clearly. Mm-hmm. Can you give us an example?
Just when I peel it all down, whatever it is I'm worrying about, the bottom line is failure or injury or lack of safety, the whole fear thing.
Okay. So there's an anxiousness underneath negativity. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we can ultimately, you know, like boil everything down to the fear of the unknown, the fear of dying, the fear of loss, the fear of loneliness. Yeah, so ultimately we can break everything down to fear, especially when it comes to ego coping mechanisms, because, as you know, our ego is in charge of that. Our ego is in charge of helping us, yeah, if you believe it or not, to deal with our fear. Now, whether or not you think that your ego is doing a great job, that's a whole different question. Yeah, and maybe some of your egos are a little over eager, okay, to deal with fears that may or may not be real. Yeah, that is something that many of us don't actually put into account. Yeah, so it is clear that our ego, you know, has to anticipate, you know, potential threats. But the question is are these threats real? Are these threats something that I need to address right now? Is there something I can do about this? Yeah, Julian, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to mention we talked about it yesterday too, about healthy emotions, healthy feelings, which is a little bit of fear is good. Like if I'm going to go out and do something or meet new people or go into a group or something, there's a little bit of fear and anxiousness that's a bit healthy because it's just normal. But if I let it overtake me and swamp me and stop me from doing stuff, that's where I have to actually stop and go, wait a minute, this is very heavy in my field, or you know, the negativity I was just feeling into that can also be that anxiousness about, then my ego kicks in, it's perfectionism. It's like my ego wants it to be perfect, and that's where it comes in, and I spiral into, well, you're not good enough, you can't do it, you haven't.
Right, perfectionism is obviously, like, again, you can break it down to fear, but it is the need to have it, to have everything perfect so that you don't need to worry about anything.
Yeah. And that's the anxiety about like thinking forward into like, oh, and that will put a stump in my energy straight away. So I have to actually just come back into my center and just let it go and be okay with whatever happens, but feel good in the moment that what I'm going to do is just going to be for the experience anyway, whatever happens. And that's how I sort of get through things.
Let's keep investigating this, what's underneath our negativity. Linda is commenting here, For you, it's also the question whether it's even your business or somebody else's stuff, where I need to stay more online. Linda, can you talk into the microphone? Because it's not clear if this is something that has to do with you trying to correct yourself, or if it's something that you've observed as a sort of absorption pattern, like where, you know, you get pulled into other people's drama, say.
Yeah,
Which
and
one?
now I can't even remember what it was related to, but you had said, consider this. And so I was saying, yeah, and when I consider that, I also think of this. So I don't know. I can't remember what it was. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, if you believe it or not, negativity can also originate in superiority. Yeah, knowing better. Because ultimately, you know, our ego here is sort of really battling for its existence, and a lot of times this is not aware to us, but especially those of us who also have strong spiritual beliefs. It is a sort of a battle between ego and God. Yeah, because really, what ego is saying is that it's better than God, that God made a mistake, okay, and that it knows better. Yeah, that's maybe a bit of a big arc here for you, but that's where this can come from. What else? What else can be the cause for our negativity?
Could it be, well, I know you were explaining as the ego's, you know, supposedly taking care of us, but I get a lot of the root in being defensive, you know, just defending for the sake of defending, but also a lot of negativity coming from the constructs we're either presently in or that we were brought up in, just born negative sort of
So
thing.
do you mean like powerlessness, or do you mean sinfulness?
What was the second thing you said?
Sinfulness, or like, you know, like you know, the fact that that you're sort of like just human, you know, and that there's nothing you can do about this, or, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because this is good, because one time somebody told me, like, in all my spiritual teaching, you know, like you have to get rid of the negativity or something, and it stuck with me for a really long time. So I've been working on it because I didn't understand what they're talking about. So it's been a lot of years, but I've never broken it down this way. I think when I talk about the constructs we're in, it's just kind of like absorbing the kind of negativity that's acceptable. You know, you just kind of people.
Yeah, okay, so I hear what you're
Does
saying.
that make sense?
It's like external stuff rubbing off, you know, it's just sort of, it becomes a baseline.
And the defensive, to get defensive, the nature of the negativity, it is, I guess it would definitely be in a position of feeling less powerful than whatever
yeah,
one is facing.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like you can't do anything about it. Yeah, or
Yeah.
you know, obviously defense is always linked to fear. Defense can also be linked to something else. But as you were speaking, I became aware of you know, this collective aspect that you meant, which is quite important for us to realize. And I've summarized this as baseline, which means that if you're surrounded by a lot of negativity, it becomes your normal. Yeah, it becomes your normal. You're just used to this. Yeah, that's very important to understand. Yeah, that sometimes we are not even aware that what we are thinking, or you know, how we are contextualizing things is negative, because we're so used to it. Everybody does it, right? Yeah, like I grew up in a society where everybody constantly complains about the weather. The weather never really changes. So, you know, so it's like almost like a common, like it's a social contract, you know, like people just like greet each other with like, oh, isn't the weather terrible today, you know, and right there, whoa, you know, negativity. Yeah. No, but I hear what you're saying. So defensiveness, guys, comes obviously from feeling attacked. Okay. Yeah, so that's, you know, has to do with the fear, because there's this sort of 2 or 3 steps in between, but the, you know, when you attack, you obviously are afraid of it could be multiple things, you know, like of dying, for one, or of being embarrassed, or not being right, or not being called out, or being, do you know what I mean? There's a lot of different reasons why we can go into defense. The other really, and this is surprising to me that nobody is mentioning this, the other quite common energy underneath our negativity is actually anger. Yeah, anger, disdain, and you know, sort of this like really sort of how can I call this? Like it's a form of disgust. Yeah, sarcasm, for example, mirrors this back to us. Yeah, this is quite common. And
that belief, Jona, I think I was feeling into that before, of like inherently feeling bad, like that there's something really wrong with me, or that I'm evil, that to my core, the deepest part of me is bad. And then that can lead to then having that anger. Well, if I'm so bad, I'll just be angry and be
actually, I can relate to this really well, even if many can't really see this. You have to have a conscious experience of this, but this is linked to guilt and shame, Julia.
yes,
that you are inherently evil.
Yeah, and flawed. This, and this is the thing, never be good.
Sinfulness,
because
you know,
at the core is such a badness that
yes.
you'll never be.
Yeah. So guys,
Good.
you see this, we got quite a range here. Yeah.
Where would it fit in? You know, when people downplay things, like even if somebody said, "Oh, you've got a cute cat," and the negativity comes out instead of the acceptance. You know, a lot of this is a lack of forgiveness and things like that.
No, it's narcissism, superiority, narcissism, superiority. These are emotional manipulation tactics to say, "Oh, I love your shoes. I bet that would look good on me." You know, it's like giving a little breadcrumb and then taking it away and immediately making it about yourself. Now that's narcissism. That's you know, emotional manipulation. Yeah, any kind of emotional manipulation. It's strong. It's the most pronounced in narcissism. But anything along those lines. So narcissism is obviously, you know, it's a collection of syndromes. It's a syndrome. It's a collection of traits. Okay, we all have narcissistic traits. We need them for survival. But you know, if you have, you know, a certain number of narcissistic traits, you know, out of, I think the list is 11. You know, if you have 5 or more, then, you know, a psychologist will you know, investigate if you actually have narcissistic personality disorder. So you know what I mean? Like it's a realm. It's not a it's not a sort of black and white thing. Yeah, some people. I mean, honestly, a lot of this, and this is why we're talking about these things in conjunction with the critical inner voice. A lot of that is linked to how we grew up. Yeah, if we grew up with people that are constantly sarcastic, constantly sort of questioning, constantly, I mean, we don't even realize how we then take this on as our own paradigm of thinking. Yeah, whether we are thinking those thoughts ourselves or not, that then comes to us much later, you know, than we actually can think our thoughts for ourselves. But first, we have to become aware of the state of where we're at. Okay, like how much of this is actually us consciously thinking this, and how much of that is a recording or a memory or just unconscious programs or just automatic thinking. Yeah, conditioning. That's the reason why we all need to dive deeper into this, because 80% of your thinking isn't your own. 80% of your thoughts, let me correct myself, 80% of your thoughts is not your own. So the thoughts are the output, they're the results of your thinking. Okay, and when your thinking is compromised through these things that you guys are already sort of have your theories about, yeah, how you grew up, what you were exposed to, you know, the energies in which you are caught and so forth, yeah, then the thoughts are no longer important really, because the thoughts are just the result of your thinking process. So this is why in self-mastery here, it's really important to understand that we need to be the master of our own thinking process. We need to think for ourselves. And the same, obviously, for our emotions and the critical inner voice, or dealing with the inner negativity, is sort of the segue, or is the in-between, yeah, the thinking and the emoting, because it demonstrates to us in the most delicious way, as you guys just, you know, shared here, how it affects us, how it affects our emotions. So the way we think determines how we feel about ourselves, about the world, about others, about what we do, and even about what we think and what we feel. 80% isn't even from us. Isn't that a scary thought? Yeah, so instead of theoreticizing about conspiracies, we may want to go to the core of the matter here, yeah, and investigate how it's even possible that we can get mind controlled. How is this even possible? Yeah, that people can guilt trip us or shame us, yeah, or bully us. Why do we fall for it? Now comes the multi-million-dollar question. Actually, where is it? This is the exercise that we're doing. Okay, I must have accidentally deleted it. The multi-million-dollar question is, why are we allowing ourselves to have these thoughts? Would you let anybody else talk to you in this way? Ever? All right. Some of you have actually had people in your lives that talked to you that way. Is that correct? Who have you had people who actually talk to you this way?
Yes, in a degrading way. Yeah.
I mean, like the you know, some of which you actually then re-experience as a recording, or like the parental voice that you mentioned earlier. So some part of that actually did happen to you, but not all of it, right? Some of these things aren't necessarily things that actually happen to you. They're way worse.
Well,
in my experience.
Some of these, I told you so. Some of it seems like, one, we're accustomed to it. Two, we're too lazy to do anything about it. Three, don't know what to do. Maybe it just catches. It becomes so. I know that I've come into lots of situations where I haven't been wide-minded enough to come up with the third solution in the situation, instead of just only having two choices.
And not even knowing there is another way, like that, actually not even having an experience that things could even actually be different to how they are, because after family, you know, you want to be involved with society and people and your tribe, you know, belonging to a tribe. And if they're all doing it and they're all thinking it, there's that brainwashing where you just go, well,
no, it's not
I don't really
brainwashing. It's
have
not
a choice.
brainwashing. It's conditioning. Okay, so
Condition, yeah.
yeah, I mean, because you just, you know, you copy. We all copy and mirror. That's how we learn, right? But if we have a particularly vicious critical inner voice, it does, you know, need to make you think about, you know, like how much of that is actually coming from your environment. Because you'd be surprised how much actually does come from your environment, because most of our societies actually favor negativity. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Why do our societies favor negativity?
Well,
And no
is it
longer
a
this
little bit, some of the
policing?
people just aren't connected to anything beyond the external, more or less, you know, for the majority of their day or their life. So I find that in order to move out of negativity, you have to be able to connect to things like gratitude, forgiveness, and acceptance. And if those
You think
things
it's
aren't
that
there,
deep? You think it's that deep, Janet?
well, no, I also think some people are just too lazy and they love getting what they want, and the negativity helps give people power.
How? That's what I'm talking about. You know,
Is
like
it,
why
is
do our
it
societies favor that?
Is it competition? Like it's sort of like a dog eat dog world, so only the tough survive. So the more negativity that's out there, the harder it is to rise above it.
I mean, you can use it to defeat your opponent, you know, whomever you compete with. But why would our society? Why would our society favor negativity? I mean, in leadership and you know, all those kind of self-help and growth and so forth environments, you're being taught, you know, to be positive, to be uplifting, to be empowering. But somehow that's not really what we're experiencing, right?
Because that's trapped in ego. So it can't really, the negativity is to show us, I don't know, it's sort of like a pointer direction towards being an ego rather than true self, because otherwise it's ego being God, isn't it? And that doesn't work. Everything fades.
No, it's much simpler, guys. Cindy, you got it. It's linked to survival. It's linked to, you know, this very low and not very sophisticated function, yeah, of trying to anticipate the next apocalypse, yeah, the next threat, the lion around the corner that's gonna eat, that's potentially gonna eat us, or the storm that's gonna kill us, or do you know what I mean? Like it's a very fundamental, instinctual, unsophisticated, unconscious function of our ego. Yeah, it's really the lower self, if you will. And in that, it fulfills a function, namely survival. Yeah, it's supposed to ensure our survival. But in times like this, guys, I mean, you know, you guys have a little bit historic background, right? I mean, you know, in medieval times, yeah, when John got sick, it was because Mary didn't pray enough, right? And when there was a thunderstorm out there, then it was because you know, you didn't do, you know, you didn't sacrifice enough, or you know, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like this connecting, you know, your what you do with, you know, sort of the bigger effects. And why was that? Why did people connect, you know, say disease with not praying enough, or not having sacrificed enough animals, or whatever? Where does this come from? Why do humans do that?
Taking away responsibility, isn't it, to put the onus on something outside of yourself?
Okay, it's a form of externalization, that's correct. But I mean, today we're not saying that. We're not saying, you know, your son got sick because because you didn't pray enough, or you didn't keep the house clean enough. We know too much, right?
Mhm.
Although in the last 2.5 years during COVID, we experienced a clear regress, even in fundamental scientific and biological functions. Yeah. Anyhow, that's my sarcasm about the COVID crisis
Well,
handling.
it's clear. I mean, I don't know how sarcastic it is, but it's pretty true. I mean, it messed people's brains up
I
and
guess
took
it
them out.
depends on your perspective.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it does depend on your perspective. Yeah, if you look at what really happened here within a year or so into the pandemic. I mean, people were calling for unvaccinated to be shot, not to be treated in hospitals, to made financially responsible, and so forth. That was pretty vile, and that was very, very low in its sophistication. Yeah, because even the most fundamental, I mean, this is like first semester virology and infectious diseases, is that a pandemic isn't caused by unvaccinated people. This is like the most illogical thing ever. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so yes, lack of responsibility or not wanting to take responsibility, I agree with that to a certain degree, but if you put this back into like medieval settings, or like sort of 2,000 years ago, or even 3,000 years ago, or whatever, it was really a lack of education, right? I mean,
Yeah, like if there's nothing in between, like one bad thing happens, then the brain automatically
yeah,
connects to another negative
exactly.
thing to fill in that gap for
Yes,
some sort of
fills in
coping,
the gaps. Yes, and it does that. And this is what we need to remember here. It does that because fundamentally the unknown is the scariest thing for us. The unknown. The fear of the unknown is the biggest fear of all. That's why we're afraid of dying. That's why we're afraid of change. That's why we're afraid of all kinds of things, because we don't know yet how it's going to work out, right? It's the unknown. Yeah, and control, as many of you have already discovered, is our ego's way of trying to cope with it, or at least tweak our chances, increase the odds, correct, or improve, our luck or our survival chances. But it's the filling in the gap, and our brain does that, guys. This is a pure psychological and physiological process, because the inner conflict that arises out of the confrontation with the unknown is an unsolvable problem. It's the reason why we're so afraid of the future. That's why every generation has an apocalypse. Because we can't psychologically handle the fact that we know that we're going to die one day, but that we don't know when. It creates a cognitive dissonance in us. Not quite yet a schism, Cindy, a cognitive dissonance. Something conflicting inside ourselves, contradictive thoughts. Yeah, I want this, but I don't know how to approach it, or, I don't know how it's going to work out, or, these kind of things. It creates a physiological condition in us, and that is very painful for us. It induces a lot of stress. It turns on our autonomous nervous system, makes our hands sweaty and so forth. It creates a lot of negative sensations, feelings, and perceptions. Oh, the schema. Oh no, you meant the schism. So the schism is when we stay in that state for too long, when we flip-flop, when we go back and forth. And that's then you know, when we experience a lot of psychological pain, and those can lead to mental health issues, okay, because we cannot resolve that. Yeah, and that's the powerlessness. You know, we over stress. Yeah, it leads nowadays, you know, to what 60% of people, at least here in the United States, qualify for anxiety of some form. Yeah, we can't resolve that because our mind automatically fills in the gaps. Now, one of those examples is the what ifs. You guys know the what ifs, right? And that's the part that you can't stop because you're not aware of the mechanisms of your thinking. You've never trained that. You've never trained to stop that kind of thinking, because that kind of thinking is, well, all of that: self-berating, authoritarian, degrading, minimizing, self-questioning, nitpicky, blah, 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 blah. It is all that. And the voices that we then hear as a consequence of, you know, sort of fixating on the fear of the unknown, they are partially composed of actual parental voices or recordings of the past, or what many people underestimate. But you've captured that here in the externalized aspect of that, you know, where you just hear people say this all the time, even if they don't say it to you. So there's, you know, like things, messages that you hear in media, in advertisement, marketing, and so forth. Yeah, social media. This is, you know, something that really mind controls us. Yeah, it really pushes into, you know, our ways of thinking, and takes away our ability to think for ourselves. So there's a bunch of different things that bombard us here, and that work against our conscious thinking. So what is the approach here, the healing approach in dealing with the critical inner voice? And yes, we have already done some good work here, but there's more work that needs to be done. And I'm afraid we're running out of time. So I'm going to give this to you as a homework, and I want you to post this in the forums thread for this workshop, namely the dump. Like, write down typical sentences you hear in your head, the whole sentence, guys, the whole sentence. Yeah, to really dump it, because for us to overcome it, we have to learn how to work with this. And as so many times, you know, we first have to take an inventory. So we've already got a good feeling here for the general nature and origin of our critical inner voice and negativity, but the way it sounds and the way it influences us is still quite individual, actually. So I'm giving you a template here, how you can work with your critical inner voice, and give you examples. So at first, you start out with the dump. So record your inner voice on paper. I suggest that you literally sort of make an appointment with yourself, you know, like, okay, tomorrow evening at 8 p.m., I'm going to sit down and take half an hour. Yeah, get yourself a tea or a glass of wine, you know, and just let it all out. Do not hold back. Like, try to capture the meanness of your critical inner voice. Try to capture that. And you will notice that just doing that, just dumping these sentences that you hear in your head, is already healing. Yeah, so dumping means record them, write them down one for one. You should be able to fill a whole page with sentences that you hear in your head. Yeah. Then something that Cindy already mentioned earlier, then you start working with it. You start differentiating it. Is this internal or external? Yeah, is this something that perhaps speaks to me in first person, like I? Oh no, Julianne, that was you. Yeah, or does my critical inner voice speak to me in second person, you? Very important. So that's a sort of a basic differentiation. Is this something, that I'm saying to myself, or is this something that I'm hearing somebody else saying to me? And then there's also the possibility that you hear yourself talk, or that you hear your critical voice talk in third person. Yeah, namely using your name, Jona. Why do you do that? Something like that. So first you dump it all down. Give yourself a lot of time. You'd be surprised. You may even fill up 2 pages. Okay, and then maybe take a highlighter or whatever, and highlight the ones in first person, second person, or third person. Generally spoken, and in therapy we use this a lot. It is, a little bit healthier to speak to yourself in second or third person. Third person would be the best. If you speak, or if you hear your critical inner voice talk in first person, like Julian, like you demonstrated that, it's harder to overcome it, because your subconscious really hears you talking that way and identifies these sentences or these words as yours. So the first step to recontextualize them, okay, is to actually change it. So if you have a lot of I sentences, do yourself a favor and literally erase the I and turn this into second person, into you sentences, yeah, or even, if this sounds right to you, into third person, like, with your name on it, or she, with the pronoun. That's
I get the she thing sometimes.
you get the she thing.
It's
Okay.
half negative and half funny. It's like, oh look, she's doing that again.
Yeah, so it can also speak for dissociation, that you're like dissociated from yourself, that you're actually looking at yourself from the outside in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important for you to write this down. Okay. You got to see the nature of it. Yeah. Especially in this example that you just made. That's sort of denigrating and judging. That's from the outside in. You actually hear somebody else say that about you. Yeah. What's a bit more sort of empowering is if you use your own name. Yeah, and you don't have to agree with the content of what that voice says. You just don't want to identify with it. Yeah, you don't. None of these critical inner voices, should be yours until you can actually identify. Now, this is something that I'm really thinking in that moment. I believe that I think that. For I give you an example for a critical inner voice that is actually helpful, that is actually, healthy, yeah, in conjunction with what Julianne said earlier, to find a healthier expression, is I talk to myself in ways where I'm asking myself if there is another way. Can I find another way? Is this the most loving and the most truthful way that I can express this, or is there, can I find a more truthful way? Yeah, that is actually sort of reminding me of my values and virtues, as opposed to degrading me. It's like, okay, hang on, yeah, like, is there maybe a more loving way to say that? So it's like positively reinforcing. Another good one that I hear now in my critical inner voice, not before I did all this work, is also to ask myself what my ego is getting out of it. Yeah. Like, say I discover something that I'm thinking, or that I'm about to do, or an opinion that I have, or resistance that I have, like a strong reaction in me, and I'm asking myself, hang on, what's your ego getting out of it? Yeah, and that leads me into deeper reflection and you know, like a better understanding of myself. This is, you know, ultimately how you want your critical inner voice to sound like. You want your critical inner voice to be an inner guide, yeah, that reminds you of your virtues, that, you know, helps you and empowers you to grow into your higher expression, like a positive or positively parenting mom or dad. Yeah. Is there another way to say that? So a lot of our critical inner voice is parental and reflects the kind of parenting that we have experienced. But just because it was like that in the past doesn't mean that we can't change this. Yeah, because the critical inner voice is, in this instance, just a recording, so we can change the recording. That is then ultimately the goal of this work with your critical inner voice. You guys have intuitively already done that, or some of you have already, you know, done this workshop or similar workshops, namely to situate it, to really, you know, identify, like, wait, you know, what is this actually related to? I had a grandmother, she's dead now, God bless her heart. She was very bitter. She was very disappointed in my grandfather, you know, my mother's father, who was a musician, who was on tour, who, you know, basically all his life, and never really showed up, never took any responsibility, never helped with the parenting, and this was all sort of Second World War and after. So she got extremely disdainful, really mean to my grandfather, and had this opinion that all men are pigs. Okay, so I'm saying it this way because that's exactly how I remember it. She would sit in the corner in the kitchen, always on the same chair, and it was actually sometimes really funny. She would just sort of randomly say, "All men are pigs," you know, "All men are pigs," and sometimes it was sort of really comical because it just came out, you know. And she repeated this over and over again, and I don't know, like 10 years or 20 years ago, you know, whenever I had like relationship issues or whatever, marriage issues, I would hear this voice in the back of my head that would say, "Oh, men are pigs. All they want is sex and blah, 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 you know, never want to show up," you know, all these phrases. Yeah, so situate these things. And you could hear this in my voice, how I changed my voice. What's really, really healing is if you reenact it. So as soon as you can situate it, as soon as you can, if it's not too traumatic for you, as soon as you know whose voice you were actually hearing there, then mock it, make fun of it. You have to take the power away of that. And the best way to do that is actually to make fun of it. And I can tell you that, you know, those workshops that we did where we had a little more time, where we actually did nothing but mocking our critical inner voice for an hour, we almost peed in our pants because it was so funny. And it took all that seriousness and pain out of our critical inner voice. And the next time you're hearing this, I guarantee you, you can't just but laugh about it. Can you guys follow me? Yeah, this is a very, very effective healing tool. Yeah, so situate it, identify it, yeah, and you know, sort of reenact it, because it, you know, the critical inner voice, if you really pay attention to it, so as you're dumping it, you may actually already feel that, can sound differently. Yeah, so what I do with my critical inner voice is I say it out loud. Okay, so this is, you know, fundamentally the purpose of the dumping, is that you actually become more aware of it. And I want to hear it with my own voice and my own skull, exactly how it sounds in my head, because then it's out in the open. I don't need to be afraid of it anymore. Okay, and as I'm doing that, you know, I can see how mean it is, how, you know, like if I hear it with my own ears, okay, it becomes more aware to me. how bullying, how demeaning, how dreadful, how terrible it is to having to listen to something like that. And when you get to that place where you're so fed up with that bullying and that meanness that you get angry, like you can hear in my voice right now, okay, then strike back. Strike back. Challenge it. Who are you to question me? Says who compared to what? Three very, very simple challenge questions. Engage with your critical inner voice. Talk back. Can you follow me? It's extremely healing. And if your critical inner voice is one of those, like Linda, that twists everything and blame shifts everything, then go a step farther and be neutral. Say, yes, you're right. That was a little bit of a tricky situation, or that was a risky thing to do, or yes, I should have not really interfered here. This is really none of my business. That's right. But the conclusion that you're coming to, that's because I'm mean or, I'm evil or whatever, that's not right. So learn to set boundaries. Picture yourself talking to a person. You won't believe how healthy that is, because you are becoming more aware of why you are allowing your inner critic speak to you in this way, because it's been held in the dark. You are not speaking up. It's a form of repressed inner judgment that you have toward yourself, and the only way to conquer it is to take it out in the open and deal with it. Some of it will be true, some of it will be empowering, and some of it will simply not be true. And you need to set the boundaries. You need to learn to talk back and say, don't you talk to me that way. I do not accept that.
Oh, my mom used to say it exactly like you just did.
Don't you talk to me like that?
Yes.
Don't you
Don't
talk
you
to me
talk
that?
to me that way.
All right, good. Here, this is great, Janet, that you're
Oh.
reenacting it. Yes, now you say it back to her when you hear her voice in your head. Don't you talk to me
I'll
that
talk to you whatever way. Yeah, because my critical inner voice said after you did all this, I was like, yeah, that sounds like a right party.
Oh, it's funny. It's so funny. I wish we had the time to do this right now, but we have to come to an end here now. I won't even be able to show you all the slides that I've prepared, but again, there's a few things here, that we need to remember. Yeah, that the critical inner voice does have a purpose, yeah, a conscious purpose, which is the one that you obviously identified. Yeah, it's supposed to avoid pain. Yeah, it's really there for us to not make mistakes. Yeah, but the problem with it is also that the sense of self. Yeah, and I think Julian, you went there without knowing why you went there. The sense of self is the one that the critical inner voice propagates, and there is a lot of subtle messages in your critical inner voices, because they all ultimately trying to maintain a certain level of self. The question is it your true self or is it your false self? Yeah. So my favorite, all-time favorite boundary and talking back to my critical inner voice, you know what that is? Says who? According to whom? Oh, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have done that. Why did you do that? Says who? Compared to what? Because if I do that, I need to reflect back to me what that's based on. What based on being a good human, based on being a saint, based on what? It helps me to reinstate my sense of self. Subconsciously, and this is why it's so painful, it's really against growth, because growth means change, and change means unknown. Yeah, it tries to maintain a false facade. Yeah, perhaps the facade of the good Christian, or the facade of Miss Goody Two Shoes, or the facade of, how did you call it, that Janet, Mrs. Always Right? Whatever the facade, the false self is. No, your critical inner voice is a mouthpiece of that. So it is a fantastic self-healing tool in that way, because, you know, we might discover some incongruencies here. It's also supposed to cover up powerlessness. Yeah, it constantly compares. Why? Because we are competitive. Our critical inner voice is hypercritical and judgmental because we are hypercritical and judgmental. So in that way, it can even lead us farther than just, you know, becoming able to conquer it. We also need to recognize, you know, what some of the subconscious stuff is that is expressed through them. And the beginning question that I had for you, you know, how many of you are actually constantly in your head, the mentalism, all right, you need to uncover that as well. Why are you even so fixated on your thoughts and on your head? Yes, you identified this clearly, the conscious aspect. That's a form of control, it's a coping mechanism. Yeah, we're trying to stay in control and staying to be rational, and we're trying to avoid mistakes. This way, we don't really have to deal with the big emotions. Well, let me ask you something here. How well is this working for you? How well is staying in your head, trying to rationalize everything, trying to control, and trying to avoid mistakes? How well is that working for you?
When it gets going really, really good, it doesn't really help anything, because it just takes into the same loop over and over and over again. It's all just it's the same thing.
And that's how you know that it's not working, because it's the same thing. It's a loop, and the critical inner voice is the mouthpiece of that. So the stronger your critical inner voice is, the bigger your problem with mentalism, the bigger your problem with control, the bigger your fear of emotions. Yeah, so let's just sort of let this reverberate here just real quick. In our quest to overcome our critical inner voice, guys, what are some of the most effective tools besides the things that we have already covered here? Yeah, those are the sort of therapeutic tools and coaching tools. Emotional literacy, practice emotional descriptors. That is what you guys do in daily sacred selves, in true self talks, in energy talks, in energy update, whatever. All these opportunities to talk, obviously, these workshops. You're practicing your emotional descriptors by describing these kind of things. It increases your emotional literacy. Also becoming more aware of your needs and wants. Yeah, and along with it, obviously, your values, your priorities, and, you know, in conjunction with that, you know, also the realization of where you're fixated, where you're wasting energy. What you're investing in that isn't really leading you to what you truly want and need. Then boundary work, especially here among, say, quote unquote, spiritual people, is probably the most important healing tool for all of you. Yeah, because what you all display is sort of really weak boundaries and ability to stand your ground, mostly due to programming, but also due to like trauma and things that you've experienced through your parents. Yeah, to actually learn that you're grown up now and that you can't say no, and that it's not okay to talk that way. I do a lot of bully prevention with the kids in social emotional learning, and I can see the onset of that as early as like 4 or 5 years old, where kids are being helped by their parents to be nice, to be kind, to like, yeah, and then when they're getting bullied, they get stuck in an endless loop because they don't know what to say. They literally don't know how to say no. Stop calling me names. Stop talking to me in this way. And a lot of times it's a lack of emotional literacy. That's why my approach with kids is, to increase their emotional lexicon right from as early as 3, 4 years old. Because this is what most grown-ups have a hard time with, expressing themselves. We record your critical inner voice. That's what we've illuminated today. That's basically my coaching for people. You have to become more aware of it. So be more aware of your critical inner voice, what it actually says, and how it's actually so mean that you would never let anybody else talk to you that way. And ask yourself if you're really okay with that. Are you okay with listening to this shit all day long? No, then you need to say something. You need to talk back. You need to stand your ground. Yeah, and ultimately then learn how to re-record it, how to make this become a more positive, more reinforcing and empowering voice, because a part of your critical inner voice is automatic thinking. So 20% or so you won't really be able to stop. You just have to turn it into something more positive, something more uplifting. Yeah. And last but not least, and this is really what everything I do here in my life's work, is to help people to speak truth. Yeah, zero tolerance for repression, denial, illusions, pink elephants. Yeah. You have to learn to be truthful with yourself, because without truth, guys, there is no freedom. Without freedom, you can't think for yourself. And without being able to think for yourself, you can't feel for yourself, and you can't make choices for yourself. So yeah, if you've ever wondered why you have such a big fear of taking responsibility for your life, it's because there's a part of you that feels that you can't really take responsibility for your choices. Why is that? Because you've never learned how to do this. Okay, so the self-healing path for overcoming a toxic, demeaning, degrading, authoritarian, critical inner voice that leads you to trust. And it's mostly fifth chakra work, but it's also linked to your second chakra, which has to do with your stance. And your third chakra, the barrier here between the heart chakra and the solar plexus, namely to step into truth, to step into the courage to be truthful. For many of us, it's also first chakra problem because, due to these experiences in childhood and excessive critical inner voice, we have a really damaged, or diminished first chakra, which is the survival fear. Yeah, so that's my roundup on all of this. There is, of course, more. Go to my YouTube channel or go into the Sacred Self-Healing forum if you would like to listen to one of those workshops where we actually started mocking and reenacting our critical inner voice. They're all in the recording. The recordings are all in the forum. Yeah. This is it. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing, for working with me here, for being a fantastic audience. Yeah, I love it when you guys share, when you ask questions, when you do this. It becomes so lively and so healing. Yeah, just to be in that space with you.
Thank you, Jona, and thank you for everybody for sharing. That was great.
Yeah, so with the recording, I'm going to send out. Thank you, guys. I'm going to send out a forum link for this particular session, okay, where I would love to see examples of your critical inner voice. And if you want to, you can ask questions, yeah, like how to address this or how to re-record this or this or that. So do a little bit of self-reflection work here and take some time to really uncover your critical inner voice. I promise you it will be very healing to just write it down. Yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Jona. Thanks for bringing this forward again. This is good.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everyone.
Judith. Yeah, you've been in a few of those workshops
Yeah.
before, so yeah, it comes to prove that it's not that simple just to mentally, intellectually understand it all. You really have to work through it, and sometimes it's also the angle, you know, the way we approach it. Okay, so today I tried to keep this as light as I could and really focus on how you guys, the descriptors, how you guys describe this and experience this. Yeah, as basic examples here for how most of us experience it. So I hope that those of you who couldn't come here today and who are watching the recording, that you also follow the example and do this self-healing work, okay, for your overall health, yeah, mental, emotional health, and ultimately being able to self-master your life. Yeah, use the forum link to share or to continue sharing. All right, thank you, everybody. Bye bye.